Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Mohamad Ahmad Abir. I am from the National Cancer Society of Malaysia. I'm delighted to be your moderator for today's session. As you may know, the World No Tobacco Day is coming up on the 31st of May, 2023. And to celebrate, we from the National Cancer Society of Malaysia have organized a series of webinars titled Harms of Harm Reduction in Tobacco Control. This series is running from April 2023 to May 2023. The series of webinars aims to raise awareness about the false narrative of harm reduction strategies in tobacco control and their impact on public health. Over the next 8 sessions, we will be exploring various aspects of harm reduction in tobacco control, understanding issues with vaping and health communication strategies, and dispelling these common myths and misinformation for our tobacco control advocates. We will have multiple representatives who are strong advocates in the field of tobacco control to share their expertise and insights in support of this series of talks. So today's session is the third of the series. We will be exploring the topic of vaping, the new harm. Our speakers for today are Dr. Murallitharan Munisamy, the Managing Director of the National Cancer Society of Malaysia. And we are honored to have Professor Datuk Dr. Lekhraj Rampal, who is a professor at Universiti of Putra, Malaysia, for joining today's session. So thank you, thank you, Datuk. As the first speaker for this today's session, Dr. Murali will be introducing the issues of vaping as well as kind of the introduction of vaping. After that, Professor Datuk Dr. Lekhraj Rampal will speak on the dangers of vaping as well as the role of MMA and MCTC in tobacco and vape, and any other recommendations. If you have any questions regarding the if you have any questions regarding the slides and the presentations, feel free to ask them at Dr. T, and our speakers will answer them as many questions as possible within the allocated time. Dr. Murali, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Ishak. Good day, ladies and gentlemen, from wherever it is that you're watching from. This is the third session of this series on the harms of harm reduction. And in session 1 and session 2, we've had quite a little bit of insights on understanding harm reduction. We spent the entire of session 1 talking about harm reduction in public health and how that's been actually a very successful kind of public health intervention. And most importantly, how that has been misused in terms of the narrative for tobacco control by the tobacco industry per se. And we also talked about yesterday in the second session, and all these sessions are on Docuty. Please continue to go back to look at them and view them and share them as well. And yesterday we looked at discussing what are actually the harms from putting out this harms reduction narrative, especially in terms of all those issues pertaining to what is happening and how this concept of harm reduction by the tobacco industry is actually violating the principles of harm reduction as is put forth in public health. So this afternoon, as Mr. Ishak introduced, we're very fortunate to have actually one of the most knowledgeable people in Malaysia. Professor Datuk is someone who's been working in tobacco control for more than 40 years, and he will be sharing with you and giving you a big picture of what's been happening in terms of the harms from this issue of vaping. But more importantly, today, as we kick off the session, I'm here to basically introduce the villain, talk about vaping and the new harms pertaining to vaping. And in this session, we introduce you a little bit to what is vape all about. So I'm going to kick on and go through my slides very quickly to be able to give more time to Prof slightly later. Let's go through a little bit of this. We talked on in session 1 and session 2, but I'm always happy to kind of revisit this and share with you what is vape. So vape, actually, within the whole pocket of electronic cigarettes or e-cigarettes, actually handheld devices. They have a battery, they have a heating element, and they have a place to hold a solution. And the solution is actually an e-liquid. So unlike conventional cigarettes, which are actually made up of nicotine, and then it comes in a paper and you burn it, and that paper with that nicotine is burned, and that releases the smoke that is inhaled by the user. Electronic cigarettes, as we were talking about yesterday, actually this heating element acts to heat up the liquid, and that liquid, which is heated up and contains nicotine, that actually produces a vapor. That vapor is inhaled, and that is the act of vaping, this entirely new word in the English language that has come about from this use of e-cigarettes. So vaping is actually the act of inhaling vapor containing chemicals, flavoring, and nicotine, the most important component, perhaps, of this entire device. So vaping heats out this tiny particles. It gets this aerosol. This aerosol is inhaled, and that gives you kind of the pleasure. And of course, that is the vehicle that's being used to deliver nicotine directly into your nasopharyngeal and subsequently into your respiratory system. Vape or e-cigarettes come in many different shapes and sizes, as well as different flavors. And I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about that. So for the uninitiated, yesterday we talked about Honlik and how he actually is the father of the modern e-cigarette and the e-cigarette that he put out. So currently, over this period of time since Honlik actually put out the first e-cigarette in 2003, 2004, what we've now started having is in now by 2023, we actually have already about 4 generations of evolutions of e-cigarettes. So the first generation of e-cigarettes was basically disposable. So they were single-use items that you couldn't refill or recharge. So you use, at the end of it, you threw away the whole thing. So understandably, because of the costs involved in making these products, as I'm just going back a slide to show you that, you know, they have a battery, they have a heating element, and the place to hold this battery and the heating element costs quite a bit of money. And as a one-off throwaway kind of device, the price was not exactly easy on the wallet, and so that made it a bit of a challenge to actually commercialize and mass produce it. So, but of course they did that as well. But over time, people figured out that in order to cut down costs, you need to actually have refillable cartridges. So e-cigarettes with pre-filled or refillable cartridges were the second generation of e-cigarettes. And within this generation of e-cigarettes, you already can have this multi-use. So where you have these cartridges, the cartridges are attached to the battery, and now you can reuse that battery. The cartridges and the e-cigarettes are purchased separately, similar like to a printer. You buy the printer, and then every time you have to buy the cartridge to reload that printer. And this cartridge is the one that actually contains the liquid, the e-liquid. Now, the third generation went into the next step, because so far, as you can see, in the first generation, you had disposable e-cigarettes, one use, and then you threw them away with the battery, with everything else. The second generation, you had the cartridges which contain the e-liquid that would then be refilled. You got new cartridges, or you can, which you can then plug in to the device. But the device itself, once it had completed its life cycle, you had to throw it away. So of course, the next innovation now is the third generation, where you introduce tanks, mods, and the sub-ohm tank. Very highly technical terms. The tanks are actually a type of rechargeable, modifiable e-cigarette. So these parts can then be taken out and they can be recharged. So now you don't need to even throw away the device. Again, it's a one-off investment, so then you can continue using the kind of device that can be recharged, and you now have this sub-ohm tank which also can be kind of taken off and put it back in. So it now becomes that each part, once they're done, you can actually remove and fix it back again. So hence adding to the life span of the device itself, lah. So, and it becomes cheaper and cheaper for you to run it in the long run. So you have your first initial investment, and after your first initial investment, it just becomes cheaper and cheaper to continue using these devices. And again, this is part of the kind of marketing strategy to make it your cost of continuing to use is reduced, so that gives you greater incentive to actually continue using, because after that initial investment of actually buying that device, everything else is a lower cost. So now the fourth generation are pod mods. So which they are a pre-filled or refillable pod or pod cartridges with a modifiable system. So a little bit on that as well. And what is this? What then happens is these then become even more disposable, because now your pods can actually come out and they can actually do they are then more easily removable. And again, cost becomes a big factor in this as well. It's all about making it beyond the first kind of initial investment, makes it cheaper and cheaper for you to use, and gives you the flexibility of switching to different variations, types, and of course flavors. So in order for you to continue giving you the chance, it exploits your incentivization at wanting to use these things more and more. So of course, these are about the devices really in terms of generations. And then you come to the liquids themselves. So the liquids found in e-cigarettes actually are the ones that I was talking to you about. The heating element heats it up and it produces this vapors or mist, or what actually is in this e-liquid. Okay, within the e-liquid, you actually get vegetable glycerin, propylene glycol, PG, nicotine, definitely the key ingredient, and all these other kind of flavoring agents. And that's the problem. So sure, and Dr. Liana spent quite a bit of time in session 2, yesterday's session. Please go back to watch it to learn a little bit more in depth about that discussion, about how when all these elements individually, though they may be something that you can consume, these are substances which you can eat, which go into your stomach. However, for example, like vegetable glycerin, but when they are used in your respiratory system, they are actually causing a lot of other kind of health effects, negative health effects. And also, in addition to this, Dr. Liana spoke about this yesterday, that you actually then get, upon heating the substances and them actually coalescing together or coagulating together, they actually produce other transient compounds which are also toxic. So increasingly, we're getting stronger and stronger data on this, and already the data we have is showing us that more than 60 compounds found in the vapor produced of this heating of these e-liquids. So we'll also hear a lot of these things which are open system. We hear a lot of this thing called open system and closed system. So what do they actually mean in terms of vaping products? So in an open system, it largely has a large chamber known as a tank. Okay, and inside this tank, you can actually insert these e-liquids. Okay, and these e-liquids can then be purchased at the vape store. And what is very concerning to a lot of us is anything can be made then into an e-liquid. So among famous e-liquid types of things that have been made into e-liquids, I myself have patients who have experimented with liquid Viagra, and inserted that into the tank and subsequently vape with an e-liquid, which is essentially sildenafil or a generic version of sildenafil. What they then get is they get actually quite a lot of the effects of sildenafil, but they also get a lot of the side effects, which is how my patient came to us was actually with strangulation of the penis. So due to, of course, overdosage of the use of sildenafil, which is not meant to be used as a vaping e-liquid. Other famous versions that have, or I should say infamous versions of people using e-liquids in these tanks have been the use of various drugs, heroin and other kind of drugs, including cannabis. And the problem actually, so as much as vaping is a problem, the use of open systems are a bigger problem, because you can insert whatever that you want in terms of e-liquids and flavoring. Very recently, there's an ad that came out. I couldn't manage to screenshot it. I've taken it off. You could actually get vape with nasi lemak flavor. I shudder to think whether they're actually putting actual sambal belacan into the tank. However, anything's possible, and with our kind of our more interesting bunch of younger users who are using vaping products, they seem to have the sky's the limit, literally, in terms of the various funny combinations that they're putting or coming up with as e-liquids. Now, the closed system is perhaps are devices that come ready. They come with pre-filled cartridges containing the e-liquid. Think about it again. I use this term of printers. Like to use the analogy of printers in terms of vaping products. So think about it. So an open system is where you have a cartridge, but the cartridge you can open and you can pour anything, including maybe ink or black color Coca-Cola, and then try to put it as ink into the printer, and then try to use to print with that. You're going to get very unreliable results. Some may work, some may just be a nightmare. In a closed system, it's much more like a conventional printer, where you actually have to buy a cartridge. The cartridge already comes pre-filled, and these cartridges contain the e-liquid. They are either disposable after use, or you can reload new cartridges. So pods, usually when you hear this term pods, they are an example of closed system. I'm going to go back one slide, 2 slides, and talk to you about how basically the open system is the 3rd generation, these tanks, and then by the 4th generation, they've actually learned that we should go to this kind of pre-manufactured or prefabricated kind of pre-filled cartridges. So that's becoming more and more the trend these days. But both actually, interestingly, Malaysia still has all 4 generations of e-cigarettes in the market. Just to share with you, since there's no form of regulation on vaping products, so everybody's free to use whatever they want, and more importantly, they can use any kind of substance that they want as an e-liquid, especially since now nicotine has been kind of allowed under this new exemption that's been given by the Minister of Health about a couple of weeks ago. Now, let's come to maybe a little bit more of on a how to say sobering note, a little bit on the harmful effects of vaping, and you will continue to see this kind of recurrent theme running through the entire series, that continue to talk to you about all these health effects and the evidence pertaining to health effects in terms of vaping, and why actually it's actually not suitable at all for the term harm reduction to be used in this context, and how the tobacco industry and the vaping industry interchangeably the same thing. Since in I think the second session 2, I did share with you all this evidence on how basically today there's almost no difference between the tobacco industry and vaping industry. Everyone's kind of merged, and the tobacco industries are the biggest kind of owners of vaping products, or within the vaping landscape, they're the biggest players as well. So there's no difference in using this term. What is this? So how there's actually a lot of harm from vaping, and how that is actually very contrary to this idea of harm reduction. It's actually just a fake narrative. So in 2018, there's this big review, which involved the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine in the US. And they actually stated that the use of e-cigarettes have a lot of potential toxic substances that can be damaging to health. Because as I was telling you, and Dr. Liana was sharing with you in the second session, that when you heat these different products together, the combination is actually producing a lot of toxic substances, contrary to what is being peddled by the industry. So studies have actually found that reduced lung functions, heart complication, and increased inflammation of the lungs, among other things. And so one of the very popular things, unfortunate new diseases that have arisen as a kind of consequence of vaping is EVALI or e-cigarette or vaping use associated lung injury is a serious medical condition in which a person's lung is damaged due to the substance contained in e-cigarettes and vaping products. Okay, so basically you're using some kind of material in your e-liquid which actually acutely damages your lungs. Now, the problem with the use of e-liquids is this. First, not everyone, I would say actually no one actually realizes what kind of substances will actually cause inflammation for them upon contact in their body. Because there's no way we test our skin or our lungs with all these different kind of substances. Put it very, very in a basic layman's term, a lot of us don't know we are allergic to seafood, for example, until we start eating seafood. A lot of us don't even realize we're allergic to all these different painkillers until we start putting the painkillers, and then we start getting this huge kind of allergic or inflammatory kind of complex happening in your body. Some people stop breathing and die. So what we're finding out with vaping products is when you start using these e-liquids, it's causing a whole range of different kind of inflammatory injury to your lung. And it's really kind of a big issue, because now you're pushing it directly into the respiratory system rather than for you to eat it, wait for it to get digested within the gut. Or for example, it's something, an insect has bitten you and you break out into allergy, it's in the skin level. This directly impacts your lung and damages it. So for example, in EVALI, once these substances get to a person's lung, they seem to be damaging the lung very acutely. And it's not a process that happens like months, years, like cancer. It's happening within hours, minutes of use. So you get shortness of breath, cough, chest pain, fever, chills, diarrhea, nausea, rapid heartbeat, and shallow breathing. And of course, since the organ being impacted is the lungs, it's extremely dangerous. A person can die. And unfortunately, diagnosis of EVALI comes through the process of elimination. Because this is the thing, if you use, everybody used an e-liquid with very standard e-liquid, which we all know the contents, we can have a test that can test for the presence of that substances in that e-liquid, and then we can tell you, oh, you're having EVALI from the use of this substance. But now with everybody using, especially in the third generation vaping products, where you can use tanks and God knows what's anyone putting into what kind of e-liquid and what those e-liquids contents are, no one can kind of come up with a test because there's just too many things that are possible for them to test for. And really then the diagnosis of EVALI is through process of elimination, where the symptoms are similar to other respiratory diseases. And then once you exclude everything, then we kind of figure out that it's due to this e-liquid which is coming to you directly through these vaping devices. So the treatment for EVALI, of course, includes supplemental oxygen, antibiotics, systemic corticosteroids, depending on the severity of illness. And this is the problem. One of the big issues with EVALI is it leaves you with persistent lung injuries and damage, which then you carry on throughout your life. Again, unfortunately, the lung is not an organ like the appendix. You can throw it away and, have appendicitis. You pick up appendicitis, get appendix surgery, and you can still function without an appendix for the most of your subsequent life. With the lung injury, it's the organ that you need to breathe. Essentially, it needs to be fully functional, and any damage of it causes a whole lasting impact onto that individual for the rest of their life, destroying any kind of reasonable quality of life that they can have. So, and all for the sake of utilizing these vaping products in order to so-called reduce harm. So not really. in my humble opinion. Other harmful effects of vaping include regular use of e-cigarettes can cause harm to oral health. You get mouth and throat irritation, and most importantly, periodontal breakdown of your gum areas and all that. So why is this? Again, because of the flexibility of use in terms of these vaping products. Some of them you can put on very high heat settings. Of course, you want to get delivery quicker, then you heat it up higher. And when you heat it up higher, that heat, okay, actually increases the mass of the aerosol, the nicotine content, the viscosity, and it actually causes burns, tooth discoloration, mouth and throat irritation. These are some of the issues that are happening and being seen in our patients who are using vape. So again, harm reduction, I really have like very sincere issues with individuals who are peddling these ideas. Vaping on stomach health, it's been found to also damage the gut. The chemicals produced by e-cigarettes cause disruption of the gut lining, increase susceptibility of the gut to bacterial infection, and trigger inflammation. We're seeing a lot of chemical gastritis, and most importantly, is driving other chronic illnesses like diabetes, fatty liver disease, obesity, atherosclerosis, worsening people who already have predisposing factors. So don't forget, Malaysians are not exactly the most healthy bunch of people. So, we're adding, compounding our health risk and the damage due to us, which we already are kind of suffering from. Propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin, very safe or so-called innocuous looking substances. These chemicals in e-liquid have been found as the main cause of disruption in the gut lining. So again, it acts to damage the gut and open it up to a lot of other problems, including chronic illnesses. We're looking now at inflammatory bowel disease, inflammation, chronic inflammation, gastritis, chemical gastritis. These are things that are coming out from vaping. This is the other kind of behavioral issues to do with vaping. It's a gateway to traditional tobacco products, and more people are getting onto this. Prof will speak to this in a bit as well. As I was telling you, with your open systems, you can use your open systems to deliver anything, including marijuana and a lot of other substances like heroin and so on and so forth. So loads of fun time for respiratory physicians and all other clinicians in the years to come with the use of vaping. So I'm going to stop here and maybe turn this over to Prof, who will provide us with a lot more insight and information pertaining to this. So thank you from me at first, and then we'll take questions together later.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Murali, for your informative presentation. Now, as Dr. Murali said, we will now like to welcome Professor Datuk Lekhraj Rampal to share his thoughts and present on the vaping, the new harm. So over to you, Professor.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk on the new harm, and hope all those who are listening become aware of what is the problem that we are going to face. So my topic will cover the new harm and the dangers of removal of nicotine from the Poison Act. And removal of this nicotine from Poison Act will be a big blunder, not a mistake. And what is the role of MMA, MCTC, and other NGOs, health professionals? Next. Okay, first thing, most of you who are present today must realize that non-communicable diseases are the leading cause of death in the world. It kills more than 41 million people each year. That is more than the Malaysian population. Each year, one Malaysian population more than that dies. So it causes cardiovascular diseases, account for nearly 17.9 million deaths. From cancers, 9.3 million. Chronic respiratory disease, 4.1, diabetes, 2 million. These four groups of diseases account for 80% of all premature non-communicable disease deaths. In Malaysia, which is very important for us because we stay here, 73% of all deaths are due to non-communicable diseases. It is very important to highlight this to our members of parliament who sit in the parliament to make policy. What is being done or what has been done? Very important for members of parliament first to be educated themselves. What is our leading cause of death? And then what have we been doing and what we should do? So it's time to wake up. Next. Tobacco use is the leading factor for 6 out of the 8 leading causes of death. Nicotine contained in tobacco is highly addictive, and there is moves to remove nicotine from the Poison Act, which my going to stress will be a big blunder. Next. There are more than 7,000 chemicals present in tobacco smoke, out of which nearly 69 cause cancer, which is highlighted here. But initially, when they brought in vape, they were saying that they're going to be alternative to those who want to quit smoking. At that point of time, we said that this won't happen, and we should ban vape. And today, what we said was correct. And we have seen that people not only continue to smoke, but also use vape, or they start with vape. So if you look at this, it tells you the various factors, determinants, right? From tobacco use, alcohol abuse, overweight, obesity, leading to what non-communicable disease such as cardiovascular disease, cancer, and all that. If you look at tobacco use, which we are going to focus today, if you look at tobacco use, or it cuts across heart diseases, diabetes, cancer, chronic lung diseases, as I mentioned, 6 out of the 8 leading causes of death. In Malaysia, non-communicable disease are the leading cause of death. Please, non-communicable disease, please do something about this in prevention. Next. I have published this before. I've mentioned it many times. The major risk factors continue to rise in Malaysia. So we have to do prevention to control the risk factors that lead to non-communicable diseases. This paper was published 2008, and many conferences have mentioned the need to do something about non-communicable diseases. Next. The major risk factors continue to rise in Malaysia. I have highlighted to the ministers of health, Ministry of Health, and the health professionals for many years in meetings, conferences, and seminars. Next. These are the rising factors. You can see how various factors keep on rising. Hypertension, hypercholesteremia. Next. And the issue on unhealthy diet continues, 94.9%, right? Have used, and physical activity is going down. Unhealthy diet going up, physical activity going down. These are the major risk factors. Next. Now, obesity gone up, but how many percent? Few 100%. If you look at it, what is happening, it went up from 4.4% in 1996 to 12.3% in 2004. That is when I highlighted the problem, that it is on the rise. And now, in 2019 survey, it showed it's gone to 19.7%. Overweight and obesity is high also among adolescents. I had brought this up with the Minister of Health last time, Yang Brahma Liao, and the ministry at that point of time. Next. We are fatter and sicker. What is the government actually doing? What are the public doing? What is the community leaders doing other than saying that we are fatter and sicker? We need to do something about it. It affects the nation. Next. Putra, tops obese list. What are the schools doing about this? What is the government doing about this? That is important. Let's do something about it. Next. Cancer is said to be bigger killer, right? So if we don't stop the risk factors, it will go up. It will go up. Tobacco use continues. We are not going to meet the targets if we don't do something very serious. Alcohol consumption also has gone up very fast. The former Minister of Transport says, please make sure if you're caught drunk, you'll be jailed. But he asked the other ministries whether there are any clinics, quick clinics for alcohol before we start such a drastic legal requirement. Where is the tax from alcohol actually going? Where are the quick clinics in this country for alcohol? I don't drink alcohol from the beginning. Let me be very clear. Next. Are there quick alcohol clinics in government hospitals and health facilities? If not, why? Tax haram ada. Kita panggil tax haram. But where is the money actually going? Di mana tax haram yang kita kutip pergi? Next. Now, the question being asked to me is, vaping safe? I told in 2015 to 16 to Minister of Health and the public at that point of time, it is not safe. Vape is harmful. Now everybody is accepting that, even WHO. Vape is harmful. It has known cancer-causing agents such as formaldehyde, acetaldehyde, and all the rest, which is now mentioned by Dr. Murali. WHO, World Health Organization, takes stand on e-cigarette in 2019. The Malaysian Medical Association and Malaysian Council for Tobacco Control took a stand in 2015, 2016 that we should have banned vape. Next. Malaysia, while still struggling to control tobacco use, is faced by the new harm that's now mentioned by Dr. Murali, vape. The previous government, led by Datuk Sri Mohamad Najib, made a decision not to ban vape, but to regulate vape. The decision was taken against the advice of Dr. Subramaniam, the then Health Minister, Tan Sri Dr. Noor Hisham, who just retired as Director General of Health, Professor Dr. Lokman Hakim, the Deputy Director General of Health, Professor Dr. Rampal, Advisor to the Ministry, and from the Malaysian Council for Tobacco Control, and the Chairman of ASH at that time. We advised the government, and the Minister went to the Cabinet and advised a ban. However, the Cabinet decided not, we will regulate. Is it regulated? Now people are complaining to us, people are using vape even in schools. The tobacco industry itself knows that nicotine is addictive. When they themselves know about it and acknowledge it, why is the government now trying to remove nicotine from the e-cigarette or from the poison cigarette, Poison Act? I cannot understand. I cannot understand why, even when the tobacco industry knows it is addictive, industry knows, and here government is making the mistake of trying to remove nicotine from Poison Act. Next. Removal of nicotine from Poison Act is a blunder, not a mistake. Please recorrect it. Please correct it. The dangers of vaping has already been mentioned. I will not mention here by Dr. Murali, he's already said. Next. Has the government effectively legalized vaping from 1st April 2023? I just want to know that. I'm not sure. After government exempted nicotine liquids and gels as a controlled substance under Poison Act, allowing them to be sold on the open market and taxed. What does this whole thing mean actually? We need legal advice from here. The Malaysian laws do not explicitly allow or explicitly ban e-cigarettes or vaping device. Currently, does e-cigarette and vaping device exist in a legal no man's land? I think we need the advice of lawyers and the government. Without any regulations to govern their use or reduce their harm to vulnerable populations like children or teenagers, there were some members of parliament and some talking about human rights, about tobacco use when the act came in. Tell me, human rights you're talking about when children start smoking at young age? What happens if in their families, the children start having sex among themselves? Will you allow? Are you going to deprive them of their human rights? Come on, before you talk of human rights, be very careful when you come to talk about something that is harmful and is acknowledged by the World Health Organization as harmful. Next. More, they say vaping has not been banned. Vaping has been banned in more than 20 countries. Malaysia should set example and also join them. Have banned e-cigarettes such as Japan, Singapore, India, many other countries, more than 20. Next. Many other countries such as UK reportedly prohibits the sale of e-cigarettes and vaping products to anyone below 18 years. UK was one of the ones who were trying to encourage vaping as an alternative. Now they realize. Malaysia has been mulling since 2015 as though the high annual death tolls of its citizens due to tobacco or misuse is not impactful enough. This is despite the WHO framework on tobacco calling for a ban of sales, right? Ban of sales. And which is Convention of the Rights of Children, which is Malaysia is a party and thereby obligated to protect children from harm, talking about human rights. Next. Here is a very nice thing. Are we going to allow these stories here and let the water drip, and then take this broom to clean it up, just like we are now doing for tobacco, and then add another harm, right? Are we going to add another harm with, or we're going to turn this off, turn this step off? This is going to be very, very disastrous. Next. If the government of Malaysia is now finds it not possible to ban vape after not listening to the Ministry of Health, it should withdraw the exemption on nicotine liquids and gels as a controlled substance under the Poison Act. That is my advice after 30 years in this field. There's nobody in this Malaysia who has worked 30 years or more on tobacco control. A mistake has been made. Please do not make a blunder now, like the previous government which decided to regulate it. If they would have regulated, we would not have the problem of school children using vape. We would not have these complaints about vape problem. So now, if we don't want to ban it, we regulate it, we accept it. But please now, do not remove the nicotine from the Poison Act. Next. So this is my recommendation. Government should withdraw the exemption on nicotine liquids and gels as a controlled substance under the Poison Act. The government must have a whole of government approach, not one ministry saying something, the other ministry saying, to the non-communicable disease problem. It should not be Ministry of Health. Ministry of Health definitely cannot solve the problem alone. It needs a Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Industry, whole government approach. The government must work closely with the community leaders. No point working if we don't want to listen. You want to have your own policies based on the industry or some cronies. Next. Now, this has been the recommendation of MMA plus the Malaysian Council for Tobacco Control since many years, 2018. Expedite the retabling of new Tobacco Act in Parliament in coming Parliament session. Increase the age limit of sale to and purchase of tobacco and vape products from below the age of 18 to 21. We don't even have the regulation for vape. It can be sold, I think, for those below 18. So we have to increase this. Designate display of tobacco, where the tobacco is being sold at the point of sale. Next. Increase tax on tobacco tax and tobacco products and vape. The government has mentioned they want to tax, but where is the money going to go? You said half the money, 50% go to Ministry of Health. For what purpose? it must be clearly stated that use the money collected from tax of tobacco products, what we call tax haram, for the smoker who wants to quit and also for prevention. Next, if we are taxing alcohol, the money must be used from tax haram of alcohol for those who are alcoholics who want to quit alcohol. We need to establish quit alcohol clinics throughout the country. Next, we always talk about smuggling. We must ratify the protocol to eliminate illicit trade. This has been talked for a long time for them to act. Increase the penalty deterrent for this illicit trade of tobacco products. Next. The implementation of licensing of tobacco and tobacco products that have been outstanding since 2011. The new government will say, oh, it's a very old problem. But we all have faith in the new government. If the new government don't take, who is going to take the problem? Who's going to solve the problem? Enforce no smoking at all workplaces. Environment as provided for is already in the Occupation Safety and Health Laws and Government Service Circulars. This new thing which I'm going to bring up is there is a move by certain circles, the cultivation and recreational use of marijuana, which is now in Malaysia and should remain so. My advice, do not bring in a new harm when you cannot solve the old harms. Thank you. Next one. This is just covered by Dr. Murali. I won't go into detail. Vaping in school, complaints going on. School children have been reported vaping, now becoming bigger problem. Was it not brought up? When cabinet makes the decision, are they not responsible? Or they make a decision and people have to suffer if it's wrong decision made? See, we all went out. We all went out, told on the TV, thanks to our Yang Mulia Sultan of Johor for banning vape in Johor. We are proud that he spoke up and banned vape. And now everybody in many countries are saying vape is harmful. There was the issue of using this as alternate, right? And at that point of time, I've already mentioned that it's no alternative. People will smoke both, take the habit. You don't take a new old bad habit and take another bad habit. This is what has actually come through now. Vape and ban vape has been being mentioned many times, but government must think about it. If not ban vape, then make sure it's regulated properly. I would say that Datuk Subramaniam had done a lot, but then came Yang Mohamad Zul. Within 1 week, he agreed to launch the World No Tobacco Day in 2018. And within 1 week, he listened to us and started taking action. He took action, but after that, he left, change of government. So did the new government continue to follow this? People were grumbling that people were talking in the newspapers, oh, the restaurants will lose money, oh, the people will not follow. But what is our experience in Malaysia? Majority of them follow the ban. Majority accept. So in 2019, people were talking, the vaping is back. So that minister mentioned that there is no let up for no smoking drive. So let the new minister who is young, please take up the matter seriously. MMA made it very clear in 2019, vaping increases risk of heart disease, lung damage. We even met the minister or different ministers to bring the new act, talk to them one-to-one, asking them to support the move. So you cannot say we did not only talk to Ministry of Health. We talked to the different ministries. We even talked to the Director General of immigration customs. In January 2022, when the new minister came in, Yang Muhammad Khairy, right? I briefed him on the hazards and what need to be done in this country, where the earlier governments had failed. And he decided and started taking action. So next issue is, what is endgame? Because I finished with vape. What is endgame? Misunderstood. Wrongly placed. Generation endgame. What is tobacco endgame? Means permanently reducing overall smoking prevalence to a minimal level, reaching a prevalence of tobacco use below 5% within a defined time period. It does not mean only for children, but overall reducing the smoking prevalence. This reorients globally the discussion. Always we talk about tobacco control. No more tobacco control. We talk about completely stopping this tobacco problem. This target set by the Minister of Health, in most countries, they are talking of 2025, a prevalence less than 5%. In Malaysia, we said we have a target of 2025 because these targets are flexible on the countries, and by 5% by 2040. If we follow this seriously and do something serious, then we may be able to achieve. Otherwise, we may not. And we need the media, we need the community leaders, we need everyone's help to reduce to this year. Ministry of Health alone cannot. So sometimes I consider that as a misnomer because it thinks it's only for children, but it's actually for everybody. What is the role now? Most of these people listening may be role of health professionals in tobacco control. But you must understand, before you say, I want to do something for this country, you must understand the factors influencing tobacco use. Then you can control it. One is tobacco industry, very powerful player in trying to ensure that smoking continues. So we need to work with them and say they must take measures to reduce and meet the targets set by the government. WHO says, I don't say, WHO says, the tobacco industry has operated for many years with the express intention of subverting the role of governments and of WHO in implementing public health policies to combat the tobacco impact. So we have to be very careful. Do not allow the industry to go to the parliament when policy makers are making decisions. That is influencing the government to make wrong policies. This all should disappear. Somebody wants to quit smoking, and what does he see? Right? He sees the clock. Instead of giving up smoking, he said, okay, next time I will quit. Well, indirect advertisement should be banned. Nicotine addiction is very serious, second problem. Greed and corruption at all levels, not only our actors, all type of actors are there. Tax as a percentage, I already mentioned, in case the tax, give it to those who want to quit, then balance, give it for prevention. So what has been our role for the last, since 1982? Some of the recommendations which we have made. Wait, come back. Hold on. Go back. Go back. No, he's gone to the other end. These are some of the activities we have done. We had played a significant role right through the 20 countries. You can see that. very important. When we talk about non-communicable disease, it must be a whole of government approach. What do we mean? It's not Ministry of Health role alone, but the various ministries. If we say we want to bring the target of tobacco down, all ministries must work together. That is where we say whole government approach.
Got it, Prof. Thank you. I think Mr. Ishak has got some questions for us.
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
Yeah, thank you so much for your insight, Datuk. I believe that we agreed that we want to have some questions from either from the audience and so on. So we do have one question from Dr. Arifin. He stated that, as far as I know, EVALI is an isolated, very short-term epidemic in North America in 2019. FDA acknowledged that vaping is caused by vaping DEA, unadulterated illegal THC juice. So what is your comment? So I think I can give this question to Dr. Murali.
Okay, sure. So thanks, Mr. Ishak. So Doc, Dr. Arifin, thank you so much. Doc, so actually there's a couple of issues there which I'll address. First is EVALI not really only a short-term epidemic in North America. So we have more, I think Dr. Ileana, when she was presenting in the second session, and you can go back to that second section to have a look. I think she says that as in the first quarter of this year, I think there's already more than 20 or 30 cases reported in Malaysia. So, and if you look at the literature, we're reporting EVALI all across other countries which are utilizing vaping products, including in Europe and in Asia as well. So it's not really an isolated thing in North America alone. It's all over the place. And as I was telling to you in that presentation today, the challenge is because when you're using the third generation products with tanks, nobody can actually decide what you put into those tanks. So you can put any type of e-liquid, and that's really the challenge. Now, the next is FDA acknowledging that the vaping is caused by vaping via adulterated illegal THC juice. So that's also actually not so accurate, doctor. So first is FDA acknowledged that there was a couple of cases which were from adulterated illegal THC juice, but there's also an equal number of cases now which come from totally actually to also correct that that conception, THC is not illegal in the US, yeah. So when you say adulterated illegal THC juice, actually it's publicly available in the US, and that's exactly the problem that we're having here as well now, that with this no regulation over vaping. Anyone's free to put anything they want into tanks and use that, and as a result, you will start seeing these injuries more and more. I think the Ministry of Health is predicting that we will see a huge increase in the number of cases over the next couple of months until there's some sort of control in place. What's also kind of becoming more and more clear, and this is evidence, peer-reviewed evidence, which you can find from PubMed and searching all over these medical databases, is that including vitamin E acetate containing products, meaning these are products which are generally supposed to not contain your THC or cannabis, all that, even that is causing EVALI. So it's really driven now on an individual perspective, and I think that's becoming a bigger and bigger challenge, Doc. So thank you for bringing up all these questions, but they're actually big kind of corrections that need to be made. I hope they've made that corrections and corrected your conceptions as well. Prof, maybe Prof has something to add on this.
Yeah. Basically, what you mentioned, third generation, right? They can put anything inside. If you actually go back to the Astro team interview, which we had during 2015-16, I also questioned in the TV program, what prevents somebody from putting something else, drugs, much before America reported. At that time, America and UK were trying to say it's okay as an alternative. Today, now they're saying they can add any other substance. Any drug can be added. I mentioned 2015 and 2016. At that point of time, that is why we were talking about a ban. So the harm won't come into the country. When you regulate, we must be sure that we can regulate. Then we regulate an item. Now you want to take out the poison from the Poison Act, nicotine from the Poison Act. You're just making things worse. Okay? During the many interviews we had on TV, We made it clear at that point of time it's not safe. And this problem of somebody adding something can happen. And later on, it happened in America and was being reported in the newspapers. Much later, 1, 2, 3 years after that. So whatever we talked earlier, we talked about 5 years before. For the audience, Malaysian Medical Association organized the first no smoking day, National No Smoking Day in 1986. Before any of the countries in the world had a National No Smoking Day except US, which had in 1985. It must be recorded in history. So we always know the problem and we try to act. But the problem is sometimes the politicians don't listen. They have their own reason. And that is our problem. Okay, that is our problem. Okay, when they don't listen and they want to do because of certain influences, that is the sad part. Okay, Ishak, any questions? Any other questions?
At the moment, no, from the audience. Let me check. Okay, so yeah, let me check.
Okay, so shall we, in the interest of time?
Yeah, I would say that interest of time, the
Yeah,
Malaysian
okay, then,
Council. Yeah.
Yeah, then let's
Oh,
no
okay.
other questions. Then we can probably conclude. Or do you have any? Or do you have any
Yeah,
other
I just want to
last
add,
statement?
my last take is
Hmm.
mistake was made. We accept mistakes are made by not banning vape, but please don't cause the blunder now by removing nicotine from the Poison Act. That is the message we want to give. Number 2 message is vape as an alternative to smoking, which was mentioned in 2015 and 16, is not correct. And we mentioned that long time back. Whatever we mentioned in 2015 and 16 to the government has proven to be true. And all those people who came to influence us from overseas, there were many influencers, right? They made things worse for Malaysia. They didn't help us when it comes to harm reduction. Thank you.
Dr. Murali, do you have any last statements?
So, yep, so we'll continue this series, I think, in about a few days, and continue working at this idea of giving you evidence and updates on why this kind of narrative of harm reduction is actually not accurate, and how you can subsequently pass this message down to your patients, your communities, and we can help make this change one at a time. So thank you very much.
Dr. Murali, the other thing is to request any one of them who find certain topics that need to be covered to write to the MMA or the MCTC from the audience.
Definitely, Prof.
You can add that as a topic for discussion.
Lovely.
Right? Can you inform that?
Yes, lovely. As my colleagues, as you all have heard that as well. So please feel free if there's any topics that you think are of interest in this kind of area, please feel free to write to us so that we can at least convene those experts together and give you informed scientific opinions which are accurate.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for the questions, and also thank you so much to Prof. Datuk, Dr. Lekhraj, and Dr. Murali for the insightful presentations, and once again, we hope that everybody enjoyed the seminar. So we just want to let you know that that we will have future series coming next week around